Advanced Building 202, keeping it level and square. The name of the game, Urge. It's a good game, but it's got quite unique building mechanics, so let's get into it. There's a lot of places to build, not all of them are level, but it won't matter because of the way we're going to build. In this tutorial, we're going to be using two building structure types, mainly because they're cheap, and currently the only resources you get back from breaking down building structures is wood. So you're not losing out on anything when you break down a structure. The first one is just a pillar. It's made out of wood. It goes vertical only. The second one is foundation 2. Make sure you pick the one that doesn't have plywood. Similar to the pillar, but there's going to be two pillars plus a support beam. Each structure you get is going to give you an XYZ tool to help guide you. It's orange. You can change the direction using Alt plus scroll. You can also use Alt plus Control plus scroll for finer movements. Now just find your space and the direction you want to place your building, and there you go. Get started with that. Don't worry, this is just a regular pillar. I'm just placing it now in advance to show you something in a second. Although this really does help when the land around you is really uneven, you pick the lowest part in the valley and start with a pillar, and it'll help you guide your first foundation pillar. Once you have the height you want, just place your foundation, bring it up to the height, line it up. It's important to know that only half the thickness of your access bar should be going through the top of any pillar. This is how you're going to perfectly line up everything. Try to line up the access bar in the direction also of the foundation you're trying to lay. Make sure it lines up in the middle of each foundation pillar. This first one I'm getting as close as I can, but there are ways to be more precise. You can always push right click to cancel and try again. We're going to continue to use these access bars to line up the second side. Make sure you snap to the bottom of the foundation pillar you want to attach to. Bring it up until you can see the access bars going through the top of the foundation pillar. What you want to pay attention to is as it turns a solid color. The moment it turns a solid color, that's when you know your level. Then you click your left mouse button again, and that snaps it the second time. As you can see, the access bars don't quite touch the pillar, so they go through the ground instead. I'm gonna guess, but if you want to be more accurate, you can get closer with an actual just a pillar, not a foundation. Line it up with the middle of the foundation pillar. Do that as many times as you need till they're lined up and you can see the access bar in the middle. Once you're done, you can break those pillars without causing any damage to the foundation. They're only temporary anyways. This is an example of what I was talking about. If you do it this way, you don't need to use foundations. You just use the regular pillars that go up and down, but you still need to line up the first pillar with the second pillar, and then you can add a series of short pillars, as close as many as you need, until you feel comfortable with lining it up at the distance you want it. Break those small beams when you're done. You can line up the three pillars with foundations, but this tends to stack pillars, or you can add support beams, which I'm going to be showing later in this video. As you will now see, it will be all lined up. From this perspective is always a good place to be. It helps a lot with lining things up. We will also look at it from another perspective so that we can guarantee that we're definitely lined up. As you're going to see, it's still lined up pretty well from other angles and other perspectives. Looks pretty good. It's all lined up. Now, in my opinion, this comes the easy part. First off, the piece we're going to want to use is the important piece for all floors and all walls and all ceilings. It's called the custom wall, and it has 4 sides, and it will use plywood to be made. Custom walls are pretty much square no matter how you place them. They might be at an angle, but the The ends, the actual corners, will always be 90 degrees. So as long as you've done the first part right, everything will be level. But again, we will double check to make sure everything is level and square. Now we can make this even if we want to. You don't need to, but for people who like things to be even, this is how you're going to do it. Just consider though, custom walls have a limit of length and width. So if you want a bigger structure, you're going to have to piece together several sections. So you may not need to always make it even. Since we use the snap points for the floor, we'll attach a fourth pillar. When you stretch it to the ground, try not to go too deep in the ground because you may need to use that bottom connection later. Pillar tops and pillar bottoms both have snap points. After you've placed the fourth pillar, you need to look for the support beam in the build menu. When you attach a support beam to two pillars, pay attention. There will be a little silhouette at the second and the first support pillar. This is the support beam we're talking about. Now sometimes you're going to run into this issue where when you try to connect an already snapped point to another point, sometimes it will turn red and it means you cannot attach it or snap it. Now you can hold down Alt and do it free until you can snap it, but that's not always very accurate. So sometimes the best way to solve this issue is to just try from another point, snap at the other point, and then try to connect to the previous point. Most of the time this works. The only other option, if it doesn't work, is to use Alt to do a free placement and just do your best to line it up the best you can. Silhouette for the support beam is a little rectangle. Make sure it's pointing down like that and it's lined up and perfectly even. Then we'll double check again to make sure everything's square and level still. As we'll now see, everything's going to be square and level. If it's not square and level, you can always redo it because everything is cheap and you can redo anything. If you use the guidelines I've shown you and the tips and tricks I've just shown you, the more easier it will get when you practice and the better you'll get at guessing where the middle is of each beam. Now I will show you an alternative building structure you can use to help achieve square and level. I'm now going to show you that sometimes no matter how good you are, sometimes you're going to make a mistake and it won't be square or level. Sometimes things will just be in your way and it'll be impossible to line things up in a proper way that makes any sense or is able to be seen. We're going to be using the custom wall triangle shape. As long as you have 2 points to actually snap to and a third to point at, you will always get a 90-degree angle with these pieces. Once you have it snapped to the third spot, in the order I've just shown you, you can use that edge as a guideline. Just make sure that only 1/2 of a side of an access bar meshes through the edge of the custom wall triangle piece. Now we will work on walls and ceilings. Just make sure that whatever height you pick for your first pillar is going to be the same for all the other pillars. So if you wanted a certain distance, you better pick that one specifically. Now you do the same as you did with the foundations. When you place the second pillar, when you pull it up, make sure that only half the thickness of the access bar goes through the top of the previous pillar. Now granted, this may be a difficult way to see if you're actually halfway through or not. It will get easier with practice, but I will show you how to do it the easier way next. When you've lined up the second pillar, then you grab the custom wall square piece and you snap it to 3 points and you will now have a finished wall. If you've done it right, it should be even and flush and square. So now we're going to be using the pillar free. It says pillar and in brackets it says free and it's at an angle in the build menu. You're going to attach the first part of the pillar to near the top of a pillar if you haven't built a wall yet, or if you have already built a wall, you still do the same thing. Don't attach it too high or else it will be difficult to see when you're up there. Then you attach the second part of the pillar to the floor in some way that's a good angle and not too steep. Select the regular pillar again and attach it to the next spot that you want to attach a wall to. While this is attached, now you can shimmy up that angled pillar piece near to the top. Once up there, you can bring up the access bar until it's lined up and it's only half of the thickness is through the top of that pillar that you're looking at. Now you can break down the angled pillar because it won't be needed anymore. Pick up the resource. You will then add a wall in the same way. This will make your second wall. Then you can do something similar on the top parts to make a ceiling similar to what you did with the floor. Now you will have a ceiling, floor, and walls. Now this tutorial is just an example of how to get certain things like this square and level. I'm not explaining how to do other things yet until it's requested. After we've checked that this is square and all level and perfectly nice and even, I'm going to show you an example of things that you can do without a whole lot of explanation, and then you can request. Now this will be a quick tour through a house that I've built just to show what's possible. There's obviously a lot more things that are possible. I'm not going to explain more. If you want more explanation, then you need to request what you'd like to see in the comments.